small grains, the next. Small grains could include wheat and barley, be the two major ones. Fall seeded and spring seeded wheat, fall seeded and spring seeded barley would be what we'd normally be looking at. There is a little triticale growing in the area, a little bit of rye growing in the area. No doubt some other exotics that occasionally pop up. But those would be our main looks. Now, what's the characteristic of small grains? What do we have as far as demand for small grains? What's this consumptive use curve going to look like for small grains?
I think pretty equal.
When do we harvest? Middle of summer sometime, generally, depending on where you're at in the area. Anywhere from the 1st of July till sometime in August is when harvest is going to occur. And the last few weeks, last 2 or 3 weeks, last couple of weeks before harvest, we're going to cut the water off. So there are areas in this part of the state where they will quit irrigating around the 20th of June on small grains and have a full crop. So again, a very friendly crop to use as a rotation crop. Now we stop watering in June, and crops like potatoes and corn need their most water in July and August. So it's a great rotation crop to work with those two different cropping mechanisms. So you can use a lot of water early for wheat when the potatoes and corn don't need very much. And when they start demanding it, you shut the wheat off. So you could effectively get away with about 70% of your total area being irrigated at any given time due to your crop rotation. And that's one of the reasons they like to use wheat in the rotation. And again, we know that there are years when the price of wheat makes it real economically questionable whether or not you can grow it and make money if you irrigate it. But the small grains is a great rotation crop. Again, we can look at a basic look. Leave our same curve in there, spring to fall. If we're planting winter wheat, fall seeded, oftentimes we'll pre-irrigate the previous fall to build the soil moisture up to plant into a good seed bed. But then we have carryover water that's going to come into the spring. And so that crop has some growth already as it comes into spring. And so it's coming along, and its CU is just going to go up. And then at a point over here in the early summer, it matures and starts to fall off, and then it dies. So this would be a look of small grain. It goes to full maturity, and then it dies. And so its consumptive use goes to nothing at that point. And then we harvest in the summer, midsummer. Now, if we compare small grains with potatoes, we'll see why it becomes such a good match. And potatoes is our next one on the list. Here comes potatoes. They're going to start, we seed them sometime in the middle of spring. They take very little water when we first get them in the ground. And they just keep going up and up and up and up, and they'll peak out. And if it's a late harvest potato like a russet, then it'll come out here, and then they'll at harvest time, that's the end of its consumptive use whenever they harvest. And see how these two crops match up for water use? They really complement each other because there's only a little bit of time in here where they really match up, where they have high similar water demands, or maybe no time at all, depending on how late the potatoes were planted and how early the wheat was planted. You can totally miss on their peaks and have enough water from one system to effectively water two fields. You know, one pump with one water supply might effectively be able to water wheat and potatoes simultaneously on two totally separate fields because of when they need their water and when we're going to irrigate those particular crops. Now, potatoes have a few little hitches to them. Interesting crop. There are, early in the season, we want to trick that potato into thinking like it may not survive, so that it starts to set tubers. We want that crop to set as many tubers as possible while it's young. And to do that, you stress the potato. You make it starved for water. So early in the season, this potato, we're not going to give it a lot of water. We're going to keep it real lean. As soon as it's set its little tubers, because it says, oh my goodness, I'm not doing too well, I'm not very healthy, I need to reproduce myself, and so I better start putting tubers here in the ground so I can reproduce myself, because I'm not getting much water and I may die any day, so I'm going to have to propagate myself with my little tubers. It sets a bunch of little tubers, and the more tubers the better, up to a point, so we can maximize production. So we might get 7, 8, 9 little tubers out of that potato. As soon as it sets its tubers, then we say, tricked you into setting all those tubers. Now we'll start pumping the water and the fertilizer to you so we can make all of those tubers nice and big and full of potatoes. And so then, boy, then we just start pumping the water to it in here. But we have to be careful not to overwater that potato. We get that potato growing too fast, and we get a problem called hollow heart inside of it. It'll grow so fast that it outgrows itself and leaves a hole in the center of it. And I'm sure that you've all, at one time in your life, if you've ever cut potatoes, have cut a potato in half and there was a hollow spot in the center of it. Now, lots of times, if it's very late into the season, or into the storage, you cut that potato open and it has a hollow center in it, it'll be rotted, because it is a place to start the decaying process inside that tuber. And so then you get some internal rot problems from that. And that's a dock. You know, the poor grower is going to get docked on that potato.